He was 9 years old when they placed the crown of England on his head. 6 years later, he was dead. But the story of Edward VI isn't the story of a sickly boy who faded quietly. It's the story of a child forged by absolute power, whose death detonated a conspiracy that nearly rewrote English history. And the way he died? His own court worked desperately to hide it. In 1537, after years of failed marriages and dynastic dread, Henry VIII finally had what he wanted: a son. England celebrated like a nation reprieved. Bonfires burned. Bells rang. But the birth came at a price. Edward's mother, Jane Seymour, was dead within 12 days of delivering him, which made the infant heir something even more precious to his increasingly possessive father. Irreplaceable. Henry built his son a world of gold, velvet, and total surveillance. Edward moved between palaces on a schedule dictated by his father's anxieties, surrounded by courtiers sworn to report his every word. His tutors weren't educators. They were architects, tasked with constructing a Protestant king. Every subject was a vehicle for the same lesson: Protestant supremacy, divine authority, absolute rule. The result? A child of remarkable intelligence and almost total emotional isolation. By 8, he had debated university scholars. He had never played with other children. By the autumn of 1547, this boy, 9 years old, utterly certain of his divine destiny, inherited the throne of England. England was fractured. Catholics, moderate Protestants, radical reformers, all circling each other, waiting for the new reign to declare itself. They expected a regency, a boy king managed by careful men. They didn't get one. From his very first council sessions, the 9-year-old Edward unnerved his advisors. Not with tantrums, not with fear, with certainty. He had absorbed the doctrine of divine kingship not as a lesson, but as a personal identity. He was God's instrument. He knew it, and he intended to act like it. His Protestant reforms grew sharper with every passing month. Church attendance compulsory, theological deviation punishable. His decrees eventually reached into private homes, dictating not just how his subjects worshipped in public, but what they believed behind closed doors. His own family wasn't exempt. Mary, his half-sister and next in line for the throne, he regarded not as kin, but as a threat. Elizabeth he viewed as a strategic asset, a marriage piece for Protestant alliances abroad. For Edward, people existed in relation to his religious program. Nothing more. By the time he turned 12, Edward had remade England in his image, but England was about to remake him. Early 1553. The royal physicians are writing two very different accounts of the same king. The official dispatches, the ones sent to foreign courts, describe a monarch merely indisposed. The private medical records, buried in Latin, tell a different story. Green-black sputum. That is what they wrote. By February, his legs had begun to swell. His hair was falling out. His fingernails had turned a bluish, bruised color that Tudor medicine had no framework to interpret. What was happening had a name, though no one in that court knew it yet. Pulmonary tuberculosis, complicated by suppurative infection. The lung doesn't simply inflame, it liquefies. It forms cavities that fill with pus and dead matter. Tudor physicians called this discharge sanes, a word that means something between corruption and rot. By April, attendants reported a wet, rattling sound audible from across the room with every shallow breath. The coughing fits had grown so violent that blood vessels in his face were rupturing. He was 15 years old. With each cavity that collapsed, his usable lung capacity shrank. Each breath demanded more effort to draw less oxygen, a mechanical trap from which there was no Tudor remedy. And the men around him? They were working frantically to make sure no one outside those walls knew how bad it had become. Because everything depended on keeping this secret for just a little longer. John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, was the most powerful man in England. And he was running out of time. Mary was next in line. Mary was Catholic. If Mary took the throne, everything Northumberland had built was finished. And he knew she would not be forgiving. So he did what desperate men do. He manufactured an alternative. His instrument was Edward himself, specifically Edward's desperate need to ensure his Protestant England survived beyond his death. Together they crafted a document called the Device for the Succession. It rewrote the rules of inheritance. It excluded both Mary and Elizabeth. It redirected the crown to Lady Jane Grey, Edward's Protestant cousin, and, not coincidentally, Northumberland's own daughter-in-law. The legal problem was staring them in the face. Henry VIII's Succession Act was backed by the full force of Parliament. Edward's letters patent were backed by the trembling signature of a 15-year-old who could barely hold a pen. 6 of 15 judges initially refused to sign. The ones who eventually did sign did so under conditions that looked considerably more like coercion than legal counsel. But Northumberland needed more than signatures. He needed time. Edward's name appeared on court documents for days after his voice had faded to a whisper. Ambassadors were assured the king was recovering. The Spanish ambassador, whose reports fed directly to Mary's allies on the continent, was kept at careful distance from Greenwich Palace for weeks. Northumberland wasn't behind on his paperwork. He was manufacturing it. He calculated he needed 14 days to make Jane's succession legally defensible. Edward gave him 6. And somewhere in the royal archive, a document still sat quietly. It named Mary, not Jane. It had never been destroyed. July 6, 1553. Edward VI died at Greenwich Palace. He was 15 years old. The grooms of the chamber who had dressed his wasting body each morning were reassigned to distant posts within weeks. Not dismissed, scattered, separated before they could talk. The removals began before Edward was even buried. 4 days later, Lady Jane Grey was proclaimed Queen of England. She was 16 years old. By most accounts, she received the news with something closer to horror than triumph. She would hold the crown for 9 days. Northumberland's plan collapsed almost immediately. The nobles he had counted on began quietly reconsidering. And Mary, the woman he had dismissed, the woman he had written off, proved far more formidable than he had ever anticipated. Mary rode toward London, and England rode with her. Northumberland's own soldiers laid down their weapons before her procession. The coup lost its momentum the moment Edward stopped breathing. By July 19th, the Privy Council had switched sides. Jane Grey was arrested. Northumberland was taken to the Tower. He was executed on August 22nd. Jane Grey would follow him to the block 7 months later. Mary Tudor entered London on a tide of popular support that cut across religious lines. Even moderate Protestants had rallied to her, not because they wanted a Catholic queen, but because Northumberland's conspiracy had frightened them more than Mary did. The Protestant machinery Edward had spent 6 years building dismantled itself within months. The Mass returned to English churches. Mary would go on to burn nearly 300 Protestants at the stake. But the deeper irony runs further than Mary. Henry VIII had spent 20 years breaking with Rome, rewriting English law, all to guarantee a Protestant dynasty. He had 3 children. They sat on 3 thrones. And within a decade of his death, England had returned to Catholic Mass. Edward, the longed-for son, the boy born to solve everything, reigned 6 years and died before his body finished growing. Mary reversed everything he built. Elizabeth would eventually achieve what her brother had dreamed of, but on terms of compromise he would have found intolerable. Henry VIII didn't build a dynasty. He built a pyre. And Edward VI, brilliant, isolated, utterly certain of his divine mission, burned brightest and was gone first. He was 15 years old. He never finished growing up. And England never quite forgot what it felt like to be ruled by someone who had.